Thank you for listening to the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast with hosts Clara and Jimmy Hinton. If you're new to the podcast, please subscribe and share so you never miss an episode. Android users can find us and subscribe on your Play Music app. Apple users can find us and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. You can find us on Stitcher. You can follow us on Spreaker. And you can find the podcast on jimmyhinton.org and findingahealingplace.com. Please rate our show, subscribe, and share so that we can spread the word. Let's get into the show. Welcome to this week's podcast with host Jimmy Hinton.
And Jimmy's mom, Clara.
Do you ever feel guilty for being positive, for having good news, for wanting to share that sometimes you're doing well? If that's the case, then this episode is for you. How about it, Clara?
This is a topic that is near to my heart. Yeah, I really want us to talk about this and dig into it.
So what's interesting is you brought up the topic for this podcast. So if it goes sour, it's all Clara's fault. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Oh, wow.
Well, it's what I do. But I thought it was interesting when you floated this idea by me because you had made a comment that you feel this big reservation on posting positive things for fear that people are going to retaliate and say, well, you just don't really understand what it's like.
Yeah.
And you're not alone. When you said that, I mean, instantly, I thought of all kinds of people who have shared personally with me, and I've read posts where people talk about this, where they're afraid to share good news because they're either going to be labeled as being insensitive or being naive or not caring enough.
I was going to say not caring.
And so as we thread the needle through this episode, I don't want to just throw this out there as like this generalization that, you know, everybody's out to get people who share good news, because that's not the case.
Right.
And I don't think that's helpful.
No.
I can just tell you that personally, I've seen posts and spoken with people who are genuinely afraid to share good news. And I think, not to beat a dead horse, but the coronavirus stuff that's going on is a case in point where the very few friends of mine who I've seen post hopeful posts have gotten attacked like crazy.
Yeah.
People are so livid and like, you know, well, keep in mind that people are dying. Well, yes, of course people are dying. It's a bad virus. Nobody's making light of it that I've seen.
No,
I've not seen anybody make light of it.
No, not at all.
It's serious. We've taken the social distancing serious for the vast majority of Americans. People are taking it seriously. I just read a survey that was done among pastors probably about a week ago, I think is when that was published. It was an organization out of Nashville. They interviewed all kinds of pastors, and as of the time of the survey, the vast majority have disbanded their services. So out of that survey, 3% of people said, we're going to have church services regardless of whether people tell us we can or can't.
Right.
3%. The vast minority of people are basically saying, well, we don't care what the government says, we're going to have services. 3%, that's it.
Which tells you that the majority of people are complying with everything that we've been told to do.
Sure.
And the numbers
and
are
happily
showing,
doing so.
Right. The numbers,
but you don't hear that.
No, are showing that it's working too.
Yeah.
Social distancing is working.
Yeah.
I just shared with Jimmy in our area in Pennsylvania, the state of Pennsylvania, there is zero need for additional beds. Our beds in hospitals aren't close to being full, thank God. But you're not hearing this news.
Well, I was just up at the church building just a little bit ago. I stopped in and had to set something up for our live stream. So I went into the building, and it's catty cornered from the hospital parking lot. That parking lot is empty.
Right.
I've been there for 11 years. I have never seen that parking lot empty during the day.
Right.
Never. It is empty. There's nobody there.
There's not much activity. To date, I believe in our entire 2-county area, we've had 6 documented cases. Number 6.
And 0 deaths.
0 deaths. That to me is wonderful news that we should be sharing. However, when I tried to share this with a couple friends, I was chewed up and spit out. There's, yes, but did you see what's happening in New York? Did you see what's happening in New Jersey? I did. And it's
sad. It's tragic. Yeah.
It's terrible.
But there's another side of that coin.
Right. And
that it's not spreading as nearly as quickly as they projected.
So thankful. And maybe, just maybe, we need to hear some of that good news too.
Yeah, and allow people to share good news.
Allow people without guilt to be able to say, man, yes, but this was a really super day. This was a super day for us without feeling that heavy burden of guilt.
Well, my brother Tim, who's a medical doctor, posted a post about Tennessee, and it was a really good post. It was a positive post. He's a doctor at Vanderbilt, and he said, social distancing is working, and they projected that, the curve was going to be, I forget how many thousands of people who are going to test positive by this time, and they're not anywhere close to that. And they're already on the backside of this in Tennessee. I mean, they have had very few cases in Tennessee.
Which is wonderful news.
Yeah, it's great. And that should be celebrated, but you're not hearing that.
No.
So I want to look at a couple articles here. This is just, I literally just pulled these up now. So Fox News, coronavirus infections in the U.S. surpassed 400,000 mark after suffering deadliest day yet. CNN, chaos rocks White House on virus's most tragic day. Then they have all kinds of other articles that talk about, how horrible this is, and, it's plaguing the United States. And they make it sound like this is going on everywhere. And MSNBC, they have all kinds of garbage that keeps popping up here. Cuomo announces highest single-day death toll from coronavirus in New York. Why antibody tests will be crucial to help fight coronavirus. They make it sound like this is plaguing every community in the United States.
Right.
And there are videos on YouTube of people showing these empty hospitals, like our hospital, like the one in Cambria County that my sister works at. One of my deacons just texted me. We were texting back and forth, and I was saying, hey, my sister works at the same hospital as him, and she's actually getting laid off.
Right.
And,
which has never happened. I said, and it's just a few weeks prior to this, they were begging for help.
She was getting bonuses for covering shifts. Right. She was getting a pretty significant bonus to cover shifts because they didn't have enough nurses.
Right.
Now she's getting laid off because it's empty. It's dead. And that's being replicated all over the United States.
And we're not hearing the good news that social distancing
it's working.
Has worked.
It's working.
It is working. We need to hear that to keep people in a positive frame and to make them not feel so guilty for saying, this is a great day. Yes, it's horrible in those pockets where this disaster is happening still. Mm-hmm. It's horrific.
Sure.
But there's good news to share too.
Yeah. And we shouldn't feel guilty for saying that.
Right.
And I think that's that's the point that we want to drive home in this episode, that we've got to work together. And when people have good news, when they share good news, don't tell those people that they're naive or that they don't care about dying people. We come up with all this bizarre stuff where we shout down people who share good news to where they finally throw their hands up and say, what's the point?
Now, of course, this is relatable to sex abuse in
sure.
that when healing does take place, it's almost as if there's a timidness in being able to say, hey, I was brutally abused, whether it be mentally, sexually, however, but healing can be found, and I'm there. I haven't written anything on my findingahealingplace.com in a long time, because when I put out 2 positive posts, it was very interesting. Nobody commented.
Crickets.
There wasn't interest. And I thought, what's going on here? And it was almost as if I got the message that, why aren't you in that dark, horrible place that you were in several years ago? I'm not, thankfully. So I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Very grateful for that. My children are in a process of healing. That's a blessed, wonderful thing. We should be shouting it from the rooftops. And yes, there are people who are suffering deeply, who will suffer forever, possibly, but there is healing there that can take place.
Yeah.
And we need to rejoice and be as much of an advocate for that as we are for the deep sorrow of the abuse.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that happens is you get so used to being a justice fighter, fighting for justice, fighting for people who don't have a voice, fighting for all these, or fighting against, rather, all of these injustices that are happening around the world. What happens is that slowly you stop seeing things that are positive. You stop seeing encouraging things that are happening, because you get tainted by hearing so many horrific stories. And I was going down that path. In fact, a couple times I was yanked out of that mindset by one of my elders who used to be a police officer. He's a retired police officer, Baltimore City cop. And, he would pull me aside and he would say, hey, I'm telling you this not as your elder, but as your friend. You are really getting in a dark place, and I can see it. I can feel it. The congregation can feel it. And he said, I want to tell you something that one of my bosses told me when I was out in the police force. Don't forget to open your eyes and see the good people who are out there.
That's a great admonition for all of us.
Because he said,
yes.
Think about police officers. I mean, the only time they're called is when there's a crisis, when there's something going on, when they have to intervene, and they see really horrific cases of abuse and homicide and murder and rape and drugs. And, they're always, usually always the first people on scene.
Death and crimes and,
Plus they're disrespected in the process. Yeah. People aren't exactly cop lovers in this nation. And there have been a lot of movements that, it's a horrific time to be a police officer in this nation right now. My heart really goes out to the people in law enforcement. And, you hear things, again, that are not helpful, where people say, well, there's so much corruption in all police forces. Okay, yeah, true. But again, it goes back to that 20% rule.
Right.
You have about 20% of people in any organization, whether it's a police force, whether it's a hospital among the staff, whether it's a church, whether it's government, those numbers might be a little higher. But I mean, all joking aside, I've met many politicians who they're really decent people. They really are.
They are.
I may not agree with them on a whole lot of things, but when you actually sit down and sit across the table from them, you and I have gone into our senator's office.
Yes.
I disagree with him radically on a bunch of things, policy-wise, but he's super nice. He's kind. He's polite.
Absolutely.
That one day, I remember that we were up at Harrisburg, and we stopped in his office and we talked to his aide, and she was really sweet. And do you remember she kind of broke down crying, and she's like,
she did. Yes.
I honestly don't know how to respond right now because you guys are being nice to us,
Yes.
nice to me.
We weren't.
And we're like,
yelling and
why?
screaming. Yeah.
Why would
Yes,
we
I
not be
remember,
nice to
right.
you? And she's like, honestly, you're the first people who've come in here who've not shouted
Yeah.
at me.
Yep.
And I'm like, that's really sad. But, anyway, he took time out of his schedule. He was actually in session, and he came out and left the session to come meet with us.
Which was wonderful.
And he didn't have to do that.
He didn't have to do that.
No.
So there was no political agenda for him to do that.
There are good people everywhere, and I think it's okay to say that, and we should be saying that, and we should be encouraging people when people are doing things right, when churches are doing things right. My goodness, I'm afraid to post anything about churches that are getting it right because people will shout that down. At least I feel that way.
Right. And I'm smiling. And I think, Jimmy, that it's human nature also for those who are not in the cycle of abuse also to feed off of negativity. That's just human nature, sadly.
Yeah.
It's more interesting to read about another preacher pedophile than it is to read about survival heals.
Yeah.
Or survivor heals. For Joe Public. That's more interesting. Within our community, however, I think we are striving to keep that balance between pain and healing. And it's important for us to know that while there is that deep, deep pit of horrible pain and triggers and daily strife and struggles, there is also, on the other end of the spectrum, those who have been through abuse and who are coming out as a healed whole person.
Yeah.
And we need to remind ourselves that without guilt of thinking about that yes, there are people who are healing, and I want to be like that too.
And they're doing really well.
And they're doing very well.
And probably silently doing well because they feel that guilt. They feel guilty that if I speak up and tell people that I'm struggling, it's almost like that survivor's guilt when you have, the sole survivors of plane accidents and whatever, they have this tremendous survivor's guilt because they're surviving. They're doing well. They're readjusted back into life, and other people died. And so there's a guilt from that. But then there's additional guilt when people shout down people who are doing well and saying, well, you're just, great that you're doing fine, but I'm not. I wasn't saying that you weren't doing fine.
Right. And we need to remember that.
Yeah.
It's so important. And I think you brought out another important factor is just that kind of encouragement is needed to know that healing does and can take place.
Yeah.
That there are positives at the end of this tragic road, that at the end there can be something very positive, that you can live a whole and joy-filled life. So,
yeah, I think we need to learn to celebrate people who are doing well, who are healthy, because I think that's what Jesus would do.
Right.
He didn't go around and was like, I'm going to validate your pain and also keep you there.
Right.
Certainly you validate people's pain. Always validate people's pain. Right. But when there are people who heal and heal tremendously, we should celebrate that. We should encourage them. We should stand behind them and shout and celebrate and encourage them and motivate them and tell them, we want to hear your success stories.
I think that's another whole chapter to this speaking out on sex abuse is the healing chapter. For those who have come out and are coming out healed, and that they have walked through the terrors and the trauma and all of that, and they're coming out healed, and we all need to know about that. How did you do it? How did you know you were being healed? How long did it take? What were the steps you took? What did you do? How are you now able to see life in a beautiful way? Those are important things. Really.
Yeah, there's a guy, his name is Richard Bandler, and he's very unconventional. He doesn't call himself a therapist. He's has this long hair, looks like a hippie, doesn't look real professional, cusses a lot. And I love his methodology for talking with his patients, because he said that psychologists really don't like him. And he's like, I'm the guy who they call as a last resort when they can't fix people. And he's like, by fix people, what I mean is they want to prescribe medication and just keep them doped up and, keep them kind of numb and let them sit on the couch and talk. And he said they never really get them anywhere. And he's like, call me inhumane for thinking this, but I think it's inhumane to keep people drugged up and, to numb them instead of actually helping them to smile and to feel well. So he said, in traditional psychology, they want to find out what the cause is. They always want to know what's the cause of your depression. Mm-hmm. So go back and tell me about your most painful memories, and let's try to analyze this and figure out why you're feeling so horrible. He said, what's interesting is I don't really have an interest in listening to what made people sick. I want to talk to people who used to be depressed and who got well and find out what it is that worked for them and share that with my clients. Mm-hmm. He's like, because honestly, I have enough trauma in my own life. I don't need to hear everybody else's trauma and all the horrible things that have ever happened in their life. He said, and why would I want somebody to relive that? Why would I want them to talk through that and go through this traumatic experience of sharing all their deepest, darkest pains? He said, now, certainly if somebody wants to share that, that's fine. I won't stop them. But
and
he's like,
sometimes that is part of a person's healing. They
sure.
have to,
yeah, but everybody's different.
Peel back like the layers of an onion to get to the root cause and then work from there. And you're right. Everyone is different. It's not a one-size-fits-all healing process. I
mean, I can tell you, I'm not the kind of person that would ever sit and talk about my horrific memories and all the bad things that happen, because I don't want to think about it. I don't want to relive it. Mm-hmm. I don't want to talk about it. I want to process it. Right. But I can do that by talking about positive things, and that's just my personality. Mm-hmm. And so I think we need
method. That's your
and I think we need to acknowledge that not everybody's the same, and not everybody wants to a saying that I really hate is that things have to get worse before they get better. Says who? Things have to get worse before they get better? That sounds like an inhumane way to treat people. I'm going to walk you down this path that makes you really hurt and bleed out, and then you'll start getting better. Well, that's a strange method, I think.
There's a partial truth in that I've found in my own self, until I face my grief, my pain, my fears, whatever it is, I can't progress from that point. But I don't need to.
But you don't have to plunge to the deepest depth of those kinds of pain and memories in order for that to happen. No. You can still acknowledge those things. You can still think about those things and process through them in healthy ways. But, I think to shout down people who are doing well, genuinely doing well, I think it's a travesty, and I think we need to be really careful. Even the posts that people post that are just constantly and chronically depressing. There's another one. There's another pedophile in the church. And I was doing that. I mean, for a long time, I was doing it. And I've really taken a step back from social media. And I keep saying that like I'm going to ease back into it, but I just can't. Because every time I get on, I'm like, this is really depressing, the things that people post.
There's a little analogy that when you kids, being the mother of 11 kids, there was always some kind of conflict, something going on within you kids. But there were one or two of you who were kind of the ringleaders, and those were the ones that got all the attention. Now, if I would call out that kid, call out that other one, stop, don't do that, don't, blah, 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 blah. And the attention was on the negative, and the positives got kind of overshadowed and were never called out. And as I look back now, that's such a shame, because I didn't see those of you who did your homework without a word
Mm-hmm.
of, I'm not doing my homework tonight. The majority of you all went to your rooms after dinner. You did your homework on your own. You got up for school on your own. You did what you were supposed to do. But my focus was on the couple that weren't.
Mm-hmm.
And so much so that those of you who were doing what you should do never got complimented or never were brought to the from below the surface up above to where that overshadowed the negative.
Well, that's interesting too, because, going back to Richard Bandler, he talks about this. He said that we were hardwired to learn through encouragement. That's what motivates us. And he said, if you think about our education system, he's like, we grade test. Well, what color do they use? Right? They use red. So what sticks out? Even if you get a 97% on a test, what sticks out? All those circles, all the things that you got wrong.
The -2 that you got, is in bold
So we
red.
circle all the mistakes instead of highlighting all the positive things. That you got 97% of these things right. He said that's what we should be highlighting. And I look at so my son Isaac is 4 years old. He turns 5, next month in May, middle of May. And he is reading exceptionally well. And, my wife got her master's degree in reading. She was a reading specialist for several years. And she's blown away at his progress. And he's defiant.
I hadn't noticed that.
He will always do the exact opposite of what you tell him to do. But what's interesting is when we make him feel like he's the smartest person in the world, not superficially, this isn't like giving him a star for halfway cleaning his room. Like when he genuinely does something and gets it right, we celebrate, like we cheer, we yell, and to see him smile from ear to ear, that motivates him. So he wants to read. And I mean, honestly, since all this isolation stuff, the kids have been off of school now for over 3 weeks now. And, Natalie's been working with the kids, and Isaac is excelling like crazy. Mm-hmm. His reading in the last week has gone off the charts. And it's because we're cheering him on. We're excited, which makes him excited. Yes. And we celebrate his successes. Instead of saying, no, you didn't get that word right, or, try again, we just let him make mistakes. And, when he gets words right and gets whole sentences right, we cheer him on, and like dramatically. And he loves it. He just smiles from ear to ear. And I'm like, buddy, you are so smart. And he goes, yeah.
I think what you're saying, Jimmy, is, excuse me, the allergies are kicked up, people, is within our community. Excuse me, it's so important for us to be cheerleaders of each other. And when there is something to celebrate, for us to truly celebrate it without guilt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And stand behind people and just encourage them and motivate them and tell them that, man, if people heal, or if churches are doing something right, or if we only have 400,000 confirmed cases in this country. You don't hear only 400,000. You hear, my God, it's, holy cow, we have 400,000. We never imagined it would be this big. Well, we did. Yeah. We predicted there were going to be a lot more than that.
Right.
So,
celebrate the good things.
There are positive things going on, and we shouldn't feel guilty for celebrating those. So there's one story that we just wanted to highlight that my good friend Bobby Ross Jr. wrote in the Christian Chronicle the other day, and the title of the article is "Forgiving Carla's Killers." And then the subtitle, 25 years ago, a Harding University junior was raped and murdered. Her parents found peace by sharing Jesus with the men responsible. When you first hear that, you're like, oh, here we go. Another naive family that forgives the abusers and,
Right.
on and on and on.
Or it's impossible. That didn't really happen. It can't.
No, but, the story is, and I still remember this because I came in as a freshman at Harding in January of 97. She was murdered in, what was it, April? I think it was April of 95. So, I came 2 years after her rape and murder, and people were still talking about it on
You
campus.
had brothers that
they
at
were
the
there
college
when it
that
happened.
were there, and I remember going to bed many nights after that, just sobbing. That was such a horrendous murder.
Yeah. I mean, that
For
on
that.
on a campus of 5,000,
Right.
it's a
That
small
was
campus,
horrendous.
and everybody knew
In
about
a
it.
quiet little church community.
Yeah.
Yeah, Christian college.
But the story, the story that Bobby wrote is so good. It's so good. I'll link to it in the description of this episode. But it talks about this years-long struggle that the parents had. And finally, after many years, they decided that they were going to write letters to the murderers.
We're talking like 20 years later.
Yeah.
Not
And
a
they-
year later or whatever. 20, think about that.
Yeah.
A long time.
So they wrote letters to these guys, not really expecting a response back. And long story short, both of these guys end up being baptized as a result. They become Christians. The one guy is an artist, and they'll die in prison. They got life sentences. And the one guy started doing this artwork, and he dedicates that money. So it says 70% of the proceeds of the sale of inmate Mitchell Skinner's artwork go to a Harding University scholarship fund established in memory of Carla Willman. So,
That's so beautiful.
he set that up as an endowment, or somebody set that up as an endowment. And the guy just said, you know what, I'm gonna make this artwork, and we're gonna bless people in the name of Carla. And I think when people hear the title of this article, it's a little bit of speculation. I probably shouldn't do that, but I'm just so accustomed to people saying, well, that, they're naive and they have this shallow view of forgiveness. I read the article, and no, they don't. I
can't imagine having a child brutally murdered as Carla was, and then one day being able to forgive the murderers.
I can't in my wildest dreams fathom. I can't begin to fathom.
And Bobby Ross wrote the article beautifully. He explains it. It was a process, a very
hard
long,
process,
grueling, difficult, painful process for these parents. They said they got to the point of where they could say, I forgive this. I'll never be okay with what you did, and you deserve to die in prison.
Sure.
Both of you.
Yeah.
That should be your punishment.
Yeah.
We will never feel different about that. But they had to release at some point that pain to the point of being able to contact those men, and as a result,
and have Bible studies with them.
Every 2 weeks, they were writing back and forth Bible studies. As a result, and in that context, I could see how the beauty unfolded. That's a healing story, and we need to hear those healing stories.
Yeah.
I remember hearing about an Amish community, and these Amish children get murdered, and the parents just automatically forgave the murderers. And I was among the questioning, and I thought, that's impossible. You can't do that. You can't. Some people can.
Yeah, what was interesting is the Amish community, that was here in Pennsylvania, and the Amish community actually reached out to the wife of the guy who murdered these kids and then killed himself. And to me, that was the story of grace.
I just,
it wasn't this shallow, superficial, we're going to forgive for our own inner healing. No. They did that as an act of grace to the wife of the man who did this to their kids.
That's a beautiful, beautiful story. I read that book, and it was powerful and brought me some healing. And I think that's the whole purpose of our segment today, is to help us all in our healing and not feel guilty for those moments when we do experience some healing.
Yeah. So we'll leave it with this truth bomb. Man, if you find people who are healing and healing well and doing well, celebrate them. Stand behind them, encourage them, help them to feel welcome, help them to feel encouraged, help them to feel well. And you may not be in that place right now, but help other people who are and celebrate them. Thank you for tuning in to this episode. We'll catch you next round.
Thanks again for listening to today's episode of the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast. Thank you to our patrons who make this podcast possible. If you found it helpful, please follow on Spreaker, subscribe on Google Play Music, Apple Podcast, or Stitcher. If you believe in what we do, consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron, and check out the cool rewards our patrons receive. Share with your friends and tell the world. Join us in speaking out on sex abuse so we can change the tides and prevent abuse.